Hello, everybody, and welcome to this fireside chat that we're having. I'm joined today by co-founders Kee Jeffries and Chris McCabe, and of course, the lovely chief software architect of Session and member of the Session Technology Foundation, Jason. And the reason that we're getting together today to have this conversation is really just to say hi to the community, let you all know that we're still here, still trying to work on Session, trying to keep the project alive as much as possible. We really haven't given up, although sensibly, the money did run out, and we're not paying ourselves salaries anymore, but we're still showing up and trying to push the project forward however we can. We're going to jump into a bit of a conversation, but I just want to start first by sending out a very heartfelt thank you to all of the people who have supported us so far, whether you've given a donation, made a post, or reached out to us personally. All of the messages and the help and assistance that we've received has really been very meaningful and really consolidates, that this mission that we've been on for the last 8 years now is meaningful to us, but also has made a real impact on a lot of people around the world. So we're very grateful for that.
One shout out I'd add to your list is there's been a fair number of operators who have kept their nodes running, even though it's not profitable at the moment. And thanks to those people too.
Yeah, absolutely. They're keeping Session online. And Session, it's still working. I still use Session every day. And those are the people that make that possible. So very grateful to them. There's a few things that we're going to run through today, including some looking back on, all of the things that we've done over the last 8 years, some highlights on the journey, and then also still looking forward as well. We have some updates since the last time we spoke with the community, and obviously put out our donation drive and appeal, as well as obviously that message inside the Session app about no longer being able to support the app beyond the 90-day period. So firstly, guys, I think, we've all been here pretty much the entire journey of Session. I think it's a good opportunity now for us to just look back on some of the things we've done, any highlights or any stories, that you've had throughout the years that stick out to you now looking back.
Before we step forward, did you introduce yourself? I remember hearing us getting introduced, but did you give yourself a lovely high five? I didn't think you did, Alex.
I didn't give myself
back, my friend.
Okay.
But the wonderful, magnificent, almighty Alex, president of the STF.
That's me. That's me. Thanks for the intro, Chris.
No worries.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, we've all really been here along the journey for 7 or 8 years each, and so there's been so much that has happened in that time. Session didn't exist for all of that time. Yeah, anything that sticks out to you now?
Oh, I mean, launching the app was a big thing. I think a lot of people don't remember the fact that everything was called Loki Messenger originally. We had this whole period of time where we were still using the Loki branding, and this is going back. It's like 8.5 years ago when we launched Loki, and then I think it was about it was a few years ago until we came up with the Session branding. So we kind of had this network developed, and launching the app around the Session branding was a big thing because people had been very interested in Loki Messenger up until that point, but actually getting it out as a distinct product in the App Store, the Google Play Store, and seeing the response from users, that was always a really rewarding moment for us to see something that we had worked on for a long time actually go out and stand on its own legs. So that was pretty great. One of the defining moments that I remember.
I think for me, it's a similar story, except it's not, given what I am as a software architect, it's not about launching the app. It's about all the backend stuff that we launched. So thinking back to, hey, LokiNet is actually out there and working way back when, or more recently, it's Session Router incarnation working. And then there are some memories I have of Loki / Oxygen Chain hard forks, and there were some horror stories of those and some very late nights when those forks didn't always go quite as expected, and we had to kind of stay up all night to fix them. The Pulse launch, for example, that was an interesting one, but that wasn't the only one. And yeah, we had some adventures along the way for sure. But and then there are back end things that I'm not sure if everybody's entirely aware. But for example, when we changed the session clients to use a unified config, and that worked out of the gate, that was a pretty big deal for me. So that was one of the things I architected. So similar answer to Kee, but I would say my milestones are more about the back-end implementation than the front-end launches.
I feel like my highlights and like my interesting points are when something happened that was so crazy that it shifted my understanding of what you could do as a team or as a person or whatever. So my first one was, sure, you know, when the idea was relatively solidified, and they had some seed funding of, at the time, I think it was 300 ETH, for someone to give guys who are, you know, between 20 to 25, at the time, about $300,000 worth of crypto, and say, like, make this happen, where it's just like, wow, like the people would just do this. And then doing the ICO phase, I think we raised $9.2 million in like 3 weeks. Kee and Simon just went overseas for 2-3 weeks. We had other people rallying support, and then boom, all of a sudden we had $9.2 million in an account, and people just said, build it. And it was like, whoa, okay, you still trust us? And then we did it. We freaking did it. And like 99% of people didn't do the doing. And I would just say, having that trust given to you with, like, kind of, we could have done a rug pull. You could have just done a rug pull. Most people did. And we were like, no, this is an opportunity to build something. And I think it was just, yeah, that there was just such a mind-bending experience for people to fund an idea and give it so much resources to make it happen. And that was like something that I never thought was kind of possible in such a short period of time. And then hilariously, as we were building the project early on, we're like, we need developers. You know, where are we going to find developers? It was our first tech company. And a guy just walked past the office. I'm referring to Jack. He just left Facebook. He just implemented their encrypted chat, like MVP, into like Facebook. And he's like, I've left Facebook. I want to come back to Melbourne. I'm looking for a job. And it's like, we're a private messaging app. And he's like, I've just done this. We're like, come right in. You're hired today. And it just these moments of momentum and serendipity, sort of collaborations that had come across the project were just like, you know, you always think things are going to be hard, but sometimes when you're doing the right thing, things can feel really so easy and so good that it's unbelievable. And I've sort of like shifted my perspective now on like what is possible depending on how passionate you are and what you want to do.
I'd add one more thing to the list, and that is the number of people that I've worked with over these last 6-7 years. Not all, I mean, they weren't all with us. There were ups and downs, certainly, for various people. But overall, I don't think there's anyone I worked with who I said, this is a person I wish I'd never worked with, even if it didn't work out in the end. And, you know, we got to where we were based on a lot of people with a lot of passion into this project.
Yeah, I mean, echoing this sentiment about people, I think for me, it's not necessarily one release or one big thing that we shipped, but I spent a lot of time out on tour, I suppose, over the years, going to conferences, getting in rooms with people, talking to the communities that were using Session. And for me, you know, you would be shocked how many times somebody that you'd never seen before, never spoken to, would come up, approach you, find you specifically at an event to talk to you about Session, to thank you, because it was the only messaging solution that was viable for them, whether it was because they didn't have proper access to a phone number or because they needed the privacy that it offered, or the trustlessness that it offered. There were a lot of people out there who really needed Session over the last 7 years. Offers, yes, offers. Who have really needed Session over the years, and having conversations and getting to connect with those people has, for me, been the highlight of the journey. The people that we've built session with, continue to build session with, and the people who have used it. That's what matters the most to me.
I always found those situations when you're traveling in a new place and someone comes up to you and go, "Are you from Session? Are you from Session?" They have these like bright eyes, like, "Oh, what? You're one of the like co-founders of Session." And I freak out. I'm always like, "Who are you? Are you a federal agent? What are you doing here? Why are you coming up?" Like, it's happened a lot of times, and I have to I have to calm down. I'm like, no, you're just excited about the project, but they're just asking you question. And you're like, let's calm down. But yeah, I'm still grateful for that passion as well. It's really awesome.
I think one of the other moments that really stands out over the last couple of years was seeing the growth during the Iranian protest movements in 2022, I think it was, the Masa Amani protest, and seeing that, we had envisioned that session would be, this app that could be used by human rights activists and journalists and protesters, and seeing kind of a real world application of that where we were, onboarding 50,000 users a day because there was no other service out there that could do what Session could do. That was really a big defining moment as well, like over the last 8 years, like seeing something that we had imagined or written about actually turn into something real that people were using in the way that we imagined it.
Yeah, I remember in the very early days, I think Session was still called Loki Messenger. At the time, there were some protests in Hong Kong. I think this was in 2019. And we were sitting around going, oh man, if only, Loki Messenger was more mature, it would be so useful right now in this situation. And it was all just in our heads. But then to see that materialize a couple of years later, it's a pretty amazing journey. In a different context, of course, but still.
Before we end up going too far on the nostalgia, I think maybe we should shift to talk about where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, the last year or so, maybe even the last 18 months, has been a lot more difficult, a lot more of a rocky road, I suppose. We've run into some challenges. Obviously, we've been, in not as strong of a financial position as we were back in the ICO days, Chris. And we've been trying to make it work, piece things together, figure out how Session would keep going. Obviously, we have been really singularly focused on launching Pro ever since we got the Session token launched. That's really been what we've been working towards. Yeah, I mean, does anybody want to have speak a little bit more about this?
I feel like, yes, we've been in a suboptimal position, and we're definitely in a suboptimal position now. There have just been so many opportunities of shift, but unfortunately they didn't manifest. A lot of people have tried to help out or put forward proposals and ideas. And since we've brought out the news that we had a limited amount of time, it's definitely brought out many individuals and or companies that have tried to support the project and want to work with us in some format. But unfortunately, they haven't really manifested at this point in time. So
just on that, I think it has been really heartwarming to see everyone from the team that was working on Session, all of the contributors, all of the people in the community who have, up until right now, as we're having this conversation, still pushing to try and make sure that Session stays alive. Obviously, it's been a difficult position. It's been backs against the wall, but people definitely don't want to give up on this project, and it's a mission that still matters to people. So, that's kind of the positive spark out of this, Chris. And I think, like you said, even though there were, some people approached with ideas, or a lot of people approached with ideas, we tried to follow through on some of those. None of them have worked out yet. But even the fact that people are trying, I think, says something about Session and what it means to people.
Yeah, I think the donations that have come through so far have really allowed us to maintain something, to keep something online. Otherwise, we would have had much more crashing and burning. But at this point in time, it does look like we can use those funds to keep things online. Hopefully, I see the next few months as gathering chips, just trying to settle all the dust, making sure we're in a good position. Hopefully there's enough in donations. Maybe we get some grants and fingers crossed on some other funding to then have hopefully a small team to maintain things. I would say with AI, it's been very helpful to allow one person to operate as many and actually maintain things that are outside of their skill set. So I think that we've always wanted to have small, lean teams, but we've wanted to build so much cool stuff as well. So we've sort of had a bigger team in the past. But now it looks like moving forward, we could probably operate a lot more leanly with a smaller team and sort of minimize the code base and make things much more refined to move forward with. I think that if this happened last year, I think there would be no options. We would just be sunk. But I think because we can lean on some AI technology, we can actually maintain a lot more things and operate with a much smaller team. So yeah, we're pretty much, I'm volunteering my time. I've been working for the last few weeks or last few months now, and just trying to get everything together and wrap things up and make sure we're all good. I really want Session to survive. And luckily there's enough people in the world who want Session to survive as well. So yeah, I'm really grateful for all the donations. It's pretty amazing that, we built this tech, run out of funding, really terrible at a suboptimal time. I had to let everyone go, but we asked for help and help did come from the community. And I hope that the future of the project can be much more community orientated and more decentralized as well, which has always been the goal of the project, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing as well. Is there's a lot of projects out there that when they put out the message into their community that things are not going well, or they're facing financial issues, you don't always see the response from the community that we have, which is we've received nearly 190K in donations thus far. It's been almost constant emails to the donation address, with people reaching out, asking how they can help. Can they volunteer their time? Can they work out some sort of commercial deal? Can they do something to help Session survive? People really care about the technology and they want it to continue to exist, and they're giving both their time and their resources to try and make that a reality. So I think that's really heartwarming to see. As we've started to track down some of those things, obviously the financial side, people giving donations, that's going to be able to help us move into the future, albeit with a smaller team and more community contributions. But on the commercialization side of things, there's been a lot of deals that we've talked to people about. But one of the important things for Session is that it remains free, open source, actually sticks to its ideals. So we probably could have gone and sold Session to some commercial entity who would have turned it into.
I'm not interested in selling it to Google or Facebook.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't
the
number one response to that was sell it to Mossad, and our number one response to that is no. Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly. So there has been all of these opportunities, but we need to make sure that the opportunities that we do take are ones that actually align with Session's values. And, that has obviously cut down some of the opportunities that we can explore on the commercial side of things. But we want to make sure that Session remains this tool for journalists and human rights activists and people all around the world, and not just sell it out. I think it kind of goes without saying that we would prefer the app to kind of disappear from the app stores and not be worked on further than sell it to someone who's going to corrupt its vision in the long term. So that's kind of weighed into the decisions a bit as well. So yeah.
I think you call that integrity. I think over the last 8 years, one thing that we've definitely shown is integrity, care, and passion for actual privacy. And I think there's been many opportunities to cut corners and sell out and do what we don't ideologically agree with. And I think no matter what, that's just not on the cards. I think this is probably one of the key pillars of a privacy project, and it takes time to build that trust. And I think that we've built that trust over time. And you know, I'm going down with the goddamn ship before I put a back door in this mother flipper. You can beep out flipper if you need.
I'll beep it. Where were we? Yeah. So I mean, look, you know, obviously the last year we've been really focused on getting to pro, and an incredible amount of work went into that. It's actually really close to being ready to launch. The issue, of course, being, you know, we're in this financial position where we didn't know if we'd be able to support the application at all beyond, you know, the next few months. And so in good faith, I mean, this kind of speaks to what you were saying about integrity, Chris. We couldn't launch a paid option inside the application if we expected that we wouldn't be able to support it. So, you know, again, because of the outpouring of support that we've received so far, there is maybe a bit of an opportunity for things to change. So at the moment, we've received about 200,000 US in donations in total. Most of that is small contributions. And so again, that speaks to the incredible community sentiment that we have and the love that's being shown for Session. We really, really appreciate that. It means so much more to get this, you know, coming from the real people who use Session, want to be able to keep using it and see it survive, than just, you know, one mega billionaire coming along and dropping a dime for us. So, you know, it's not necessarily a huge chunk of funding when you're talking about hiring developers to work on security technology that's really at the edge of its scene, but it is enough to keep Session going for longer than we originally thought and said in our announcements. And really, a lot of that is actually going to be depending on Jason. And Jason, I might let you speak for yourself here about what you're kind of planning to do and how you're going to keep Session going.
Yeah, so I think our plan here depends a little bit on the amount of funding that we can accumulate. Now that 200,000 is definitely enough that we can do something. So I personally, I'm not ready to give up on Session. I want to see it continue, and I want to keep working on it. And so I'm committed to that approach to it. But we do have to make some changes in terms of how we develop Session for a bunch of reasons. And these are changes that we've needed to do for quite a long time. So just to jump back for a minute, because I'm not sure if everybody using Session is aware of our history. Way back when we were Loki Messenger, we started out as a fork of Signal, the fork of the Signal code base, and we built on top of that. Now, it doesn't much resemble Signal anymore, but it's got some of those underpinnings that we inherited. And one of the things that we inherited was essentially that there are 3 distinct applications. So we talk about Session as if it's just one thing, but it's not. There's Session iOS, there's Session Android, there's Session Desktop. And those are 3 independent implementations. So whenever we want to go out and add a feature, we have to put it in 3 different applications. And we have always taken great care to make sure that it's the same in all those applications. So if someone wants to add a feature, we have to say, well, hang on, is this something that we can actually support in all 3 of them? And if it is, then we say, okay, well, how do we fit it into our roadmap? Where do we do it? But that has been, for a long time, that's been quite an obstacle, because it means that you have to have 3 dev teams to work on this thing. They're not written in the same language. Session iOS is written in Swift. There's Kotlin for Session Android and Node.js Electron for the desktop. So they're 3 very different languages. Now, one of the things that I have wanted us to do for quite a long time is to unify that, to bring that together. So work started, I want to say about 3 years ago, into this common library that we have called libsession util. And that was where the very first thing to go in there was the config upgrades. I'd mentioned that in our retrospective, but that to me was a huge improvement into session, because what it meant was we have just one code base that deals with config. And by config, I mean all of those devices, they have settings, they have contacts, they have conversations, they have all sorts of things, everything associated with your account. That all gets stored, but that was the first thing where we didn't have 3 separate implementations. They simply used this one implementation and they built on top of it. Now, since then, we've added a whole bunch more. We've added things like the encryption handling is now into a single place. The attachment handling is partially in there. The actual encryption of attachments is in there, encryption and decryption. But still, fundamentally, we have these 3 applications. Now, the problem with that is it's quite high cost in terms of developer time, as I mentioned, because you've got 3 different applications. And one of the things that we have wanted to do, but as a sort of, well, wouldn't it be nice to get there someday, is to increase the scope of this lib session library. So rather than just be here, it's a bunch of utility functions that these 3 clients are using to do things. We want lib session to become session. So it will understand messages, it will understand swarms, it will understand fetching, it will understand how to go out to swarms, how to build onion requests, how to talk to the network. All of the complicated logic would live there. And the only thing that we want to happen in the actual graphical interfaces is display the stuff. The lib session gets everything. It knows what your messages are, it knows your conversations, it knows everything that you want to do. And then it just tells the GUI, display this conversation. Here's a message, show it. That's it. Very dumb. Because it's pulling all the intelligence back into this core lib session. Now, one of the reasons that we haven't done that has been that it has traditionally been quite a lift, because there's a lot of code involved. But in our current crisis, I kind of had to look at where we were going and what we could do. And one of the things that we need to do is get ourselves down in cost so that we could have a team of maybe 3 devs who can keep everything working, can keep session, not just maintain it, but actually build new things into session. And so that's what we're aiming to do here through this lib session library. Now, that does, if we were thinking about this a year ago, as Chris mentioned earlier, it really wouldn't have been feasible. It would have been quite costly to undergo that transition. But one of the things that really has come about in the last, I want to say the last 6 months, is how sophisticated AI coding has become, to the point that I can sit down with 2 or 3 AIs working on different features and direct them into actually implementing something. And one of the last big things that I was working on before we shut down was the PFS and post-quantum encryption support. That is all built in libsession, by the way. It's not built into any of those 3 clients yet, but the core of it is all present. And this was also a learning experience for me of how can AI actually interact with our code bases, because we have a lot of code between session router, between all the code in libsession. We have onion requests, we have encryption, we have all these different functionalities spread across several different code bases. And it was a little bit rough at first. AI had some tendency to kind of to write code, I would say, in a not very maintainable way. I wanted to just sort of replicate a bunch of stuff and copy and paste stuff over. I had to kind of learn how to do it, how to temper it, how to say, no, I want code that if you're writing this code over here and it's similar to what's over there, refactor that. And once instructed to do that, it actually became really good at it. So most of the PFS post-quantum encryption code that I wrote, that was mostly done by AI coding. And what it accomplished in quite a short time actually considerably impressed me, and to the point at which I now think it is feasible for a small team to undergo this transformation of rebuilding the apps with this intelligent core, and then making the graphical interface around it dumb, for lack of a better word. So a year ago we couldn't have done it, but I think that now we can. And so that's kind of the general roadmap of how we go forward. We build out this core, and we build the dumb GUI on top of that. And that gives us one code base for all the logic, and one code base for all the how we actually display this. Maybe 1.5. We're still in discussions about how the GUI side of it would work. But that means we can build something at much lower cost than we could before, by basically bringing everything in to this one code base for logic, one code base for display.
And I guess that kind of gives us half of the equation that we need here in terms of keeping session going. One thing that it's clear that we need is to be able to run and maintain the application and the platform with less resources. And the other half is that we're still going to need some kind of funding coming in, right? Obviously, we've gotten this round of donations that have come through earlier this year, which again is very heartwarming and so appreciated from the community to give us this lifeline to do the work that Jason's talking about now. But we don't want to come back every single year asking the community to chip in again and again and again. We want to be able to get to a point still where session is a self-sustaining platform, which is where the work that's been done on Pro already comes to the fore. And again, Jason, I mean, you've spoken about still wanting to launch Pro. Once the lib sessions work is kind of complete, we could get Pro out the door. Of course, that's going to help out the community and the ecosystem overall as well.
Yeah. In terms of Pro, when you say self-sustaining, you don't only mean for Session the application, but you also mean for the community overall, right? Because the plan of Pro has always been to take revenue and put that back into the reward pool for service nodes so that they earn that, and essentially Pro payments getting paid by users get eventually, it's slow release on the funding, but that funding comes back to the operators, not just us, but all the operators on the network. So that is a really important goal for sure. Now we have spent, I think, about 8 or 9 months in total across multiple teams working on Pro on the current code bases. And as I can't remember who said it earlier, Kee or Alex, someone, the Pro support is done for all intents and purposes. It needs some polish, it needs some testing, but it's very close to a point at which we can launch it. But as we mentioned earlier, we can't launch it unless we actually have a team here, because things can go wrong and you need someone there who can maintain it, who can update it. So conditional on we can find a way to make it work with at least a couple devs, what we would be looking to do is launch Pro in the current applications, do that, spend a month maybe just doing that final polish and testing as needed, maybe not even a month, but just make sure it's, spend a little bit of time polishing it, getting it ready, and putting that out so that people can start, especially people who want to contribute to the project, can start subscribing to Pro. Now, we're aware initial Pro features, there's nothing hugely compelling in there. It's mostly about, hey, I want to support the project with just a small monthly subscription. So in some sense, you could look at it similarly to the donation drive. But we do want to continue to develop Pro features as we go. And an important part of that is we can put out the current apps with their current Pro support, but we want to develop this unified code base. We want to get that out the door before the end of this year, realistically, in such a way that we can start adding pro features like large file downloads and so on onto that code base. There's a lot of pieces in there. There's a lot of code that is working in test versions of the application. Session iOS in particular, the lead Session iOS developer spent a fair amount of effort building session router support into test versions of Session iOS that work quite well. We didn't release it on the network because Session router isn't yet mandatory on the network, but that would be one of our current features, because Session router also is ready to get launched by all the nodes on the network.
Yeah, it's kind of we're at this interesting inflection point, obviously, with where we have less resources in terms of, you know, the team and the developers working on Session, but also where we're so close to all of these breakpoints that are going to improve Session so much. You know, lib Session, Session router, Session Pro, all of this. You know, the puzzle pieces are there and they're about to slot in together.
Yeah, one of the other things I mentioned earlier, that was our PFS, our perfect forward secrecy and post-quantum support. That is done in terms of all the encryption and all the communications. The only thing left is we need to plug it into a client. So one of the things that this unified code base does is say, hey, this thing that's already done, hey, we can start using it. And that's the case for quite a bit of the technology that we have been working on.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make in terms of how far along we are towards like supporting some of these features that we've been talking about supporting for a long time. I think the other thing that's important to note as well is that like we had kind of gone out 60 days ago or a couple months ago saying that we didn't essentially have the funding to continue the mission. The funding or the support that people have given thus far has been able to give us enough resources to be able to, have some developers push towards these features. And I think it's not just the community funding aspect. It's also like we're applying for some grants from different like non-for-profit organizations. And we think that, if those grants come through, we'll be able to potentially add $200,000 more to the budget to be able to hire a few more developers and continue to kind of push forward on those features. And then, we've always kind of talked about this with Pro as it being, a funding source for the community. In the Pro, people pay for Pro, and then that kind of gets recirculated back to the ecosystem, back to the node operators. But also having that source of value coming into the ecosystem also potentially gives us the opportunity to sustain the development team for a longer period of time. So, in terms of how we're looking at Pro and the value that comes in, it's likely that there's going to need to be some split between the development team receiving some of the value there to be able to sustain operations and continue to add features to Pro in the future, but also to be able to have that value feedback mechanism for the ecosystem as well. Because we understand that we can't just keep paying session tokens out, or the network can't just keep paying session tokens out to node operators without there being some value feedback mechanism to capture those tokens back and then lock them up for some period of time. So, it's like a balance of all of these different things. It's Pro, it's grants, it's donations that the community has given that I think are going to be able to sustain the team moving forward, albeit a much smaller team than we originally had. But, through the balance of all of those things, that's kind of where we see the future direction. And a lot of what Jason has been talking about as well is trying to find ways to reduce the amount of resources that we're spending capital on to be able to develop the application. So unifying the code base into a single, library that can be used to build on top of. That really reduces the amount of resources that we need to spend to develop Session, because we don't need 2 developers on every single platform now. So yeah, I think that all makes sense from my perspective.
One of the other advantages of that unified code base idea is a good example that this goes back maybe a couple of years. We had a community contributor writing code for one of the platforms. And in this case, it was to add Markdown support into messages. And some people know who this person was. He's no longer in the community, but he did a lot of testing, made a lot of contributions. But he wanted to add Markdown support, which has been on our roadmap for I don't know how many years. But it's on there. And he wrote a PR to do it, but his PR only applied to Session Desktop. And as I mentioned earlier, when you've got the 3 clients, we could accept that for Session Desktop, but then we would have to make sure that it worked exactly the same way in Session iOS and exactly the same way in Session Android. And we were working on other things that we just at the time couldn't prioritize. Duplicating that development that had been contributed by someone in the community, but we would have to create those 2 separate implementations also from scratch. Now, moving towards a unified code base, I think it makes it a lot easier for people in the community who just want to contribute as on a volunteer basis to say, hey, I want to add this feature. There's a bunch of things that I'd love to add into Session. I think in just about every feature request internal meeting we've ever done about what priorities have been, I've said, I want editing support. And editing support is a bit tricky, but it becomes so much easier when you just have one single client that understands how edits work. And there's any number of features that we can feasibly do with a small team of AI augmented developers.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think there's going to be a little bit of a shift more towards, community involvement as well. Like you said, Jason, it's a lot easier for people to chip in a feature from the community if the thing that they do can be unified across platforms. Also, on the flip side, like for me, I'll still be volunteering time for Session, doing whatever I can. I'm not going to be writing code, but there's a lot of other ways that I can still help out. And I think a lot of people, this is an open invitation and a welcome. If you've been out in the community and you felt like you've been, on the edges or on the outside looking in, well, this is your opportunity to get in and get involved, because more than ever, Session is transforming into a community-driven project. We've always had that ethos and spirit, and now, that's really going to be the dominant theme of how we're operating going forwards.
I think that's an important distinction to make as well, is that, because we've had these disparate code bases like iOS, Android, and desktop, it's been, as Jason was saying, it's harder to make contributions because a lot of those features that we would want in the application would then need an implementation on the 2 other platforms. Say if you wrote something for Session iOS, then, if it's a cross-platform feature, it needs to be developed for desktop and Android. A part of what we're doing here in terms of unifying the code bases is that a feature can be added into the single, single libsession library, and then there can be GUI kind of applications which represent that feature. I think the other kind of thing that's quite interesting is that a lot of developers, and especially kind of the AI tools, they're actually quite good at developing front ends around a core library, where you have a kind of specification of, these are the types of messages, these are the APIs that you can talk to, build me a front end that is going to, be able to work with disappearing messages or something like that, or a new feature that you're adding. So I think, allowing to have, or, kind of abstracting away some of the back-end code from community contributors and just saying, hey, you guys can come and work on, some of the front end things that you want to do. It makes that a lot easier, because a lot of the applications, Session Desktop, Android, iOS, there's a lot of intermingling between the logic side of things, the back-end logic, and the UI layer. And we're really trying to separate that by having a unified code base for the back end, and then having the UIs be this kind of dumb layer that's built on top of that. So I think that separation is going to make it a lot easier for community contributors to come along and, add features to maybe the official clients that we build, but also if you want to build an unofficial Session client on top of the core libsession util or libsession when it gets released, that becomes a lot easier than it is now because we're going to be kind of supporting that functionality. So yeah, I think the space for community contributions is really going to open up a lot more.
I think there's a really fun shift happening now as well. So if I think about Session, because it's an off-profit foundation, everything's open source front and back end, compared to a private company with closed source tech and everything's closed source run by like that one company. Like we can't shut down Session if we tried. Like it is just out there. If you're running a node, it's going to keep running. And the really cool thing is like we can't be like, oh, we've run out of money. No, we have to sell the tech. We have to sell everything. We have to sell data. Like we don't have it to sell and it's all available. So from our side, it just takes one or two really passionate people and a community and the whole thing can just become better than it ever was. So it's such a crazy point in time in reality where, instead of being chopped up and sold to an equity firm like many other private messaging companies sort of end up going down when they run out of funding, we're just heading to like a new phase of Session. Like it's heading into this, like, I don't know what the future is going to hold, but it's really going into such a distributed amount of hands. And I don't know, I just feel like it's a very exciting point in time. I haven't seen this happen with a company before, when it's gone from moving at this pace to completely freezing, not knowing what the fuck to do next, and then being like, you know what, it's open source, it's free, it's happening. We got a few passionate people, let's just go for it. And I just think it's a really exciting point of technology to see how this goes. Like I'm really excited to see what happens next.
I would also point out we actually did have some offers to basically dismantle Session and absorb it into something else, which we said no to, because ultimately they're just about destroying Session. We want to see Session thrive.
I think there's an important distinction here. I mean, we've kind of touched on this throughout the conversation, but like when we say we want Session to survive, we want it to continue, we don't just mean we want there to be an app in the App Store called Session. We're talking about, the spirit of Session, the mission of Session. We want that to continue to live on, and that means being independent. It means being free and open source. It means protecting people's privacy and security above all else. That's really what we mean by that. Not just the brand or the specific application that you download and use.
Jumping back into the idea of contributions, a couple more points I wanted to make. One, Kee was talking about how it's difficult for community members to contribute into the 3 code bases. It wasn't only community members, like people within the Session team who wanted us to do some particular thing. No one on the team has Swift and Kotlin and Electron and C++ experience, which is what you'd have to do and what you'd have to actually tackle this. So it's not just about open source contributions, it's about the development cost, as I mentioned earlier. So the other thing I wanted to mention is, for me, open source has always been a really important part, and it was one of the things that brought me into the project initially, was that open source spirit. So for me, I mean, I was writing and contributing to open source projects long before I joined at that time, the Loki project. And to be able to continue to do that is really exciting for me. So this is what I want to do. This is not about me trying to make money out of it. I want to do this.
Yeah, I'll just say as well, like, it's been such an interesting journey over the last 8.5 years, and we started with 4 original founders, 2 of which are on the call right now, and Jason joined the team a little bit after we founded things. I think it was about a year after we founded things. But I
joined a little before then, but I initially joined as a foundation member. I think Simon invited me way back when, because we had this big public argument about finances, and I thought he was going to ban me, but he didn't. He invited me to join the foundation instead.
Yeah, exactly. And I think seeing Jason's contribution to the project over the last 7 and a bit years has been wonderful. He's been one of the people who's pushed the project forward the most, And I'm really like happy that Jason is staying on board and continuing to push the mission forward. I think he is a great representative, I think he's a great representative of the project, a great representative of the ideals that we hold here and the values that we want to keep pushing forward. You know, in terms of me personally, like I'm going to be stepping back from the project. It's been 8.5 years for me, and I've tried to give it my all over that whole period of time. But I think it's time for me to take a little bit of a break. But I think Jason, like it's in the right hands with Jason, and I'm really happy and excited for you know, the things that Jason has been talking about with unifying the code base. That's something that we tried to do while I was here. But I think, you know, now that we're a bit leaner and we're going to be focusing on this more, I think it's really going to bring, you know, great dividends for the project to be able to run in a leaner operation and do some of the things that we've wanted to do over the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And even as you mentioned before, Kee, you know, we're entering this new phase that's going to be more community driven. And again, I think Jason, there's not a more perfect person to drive Session through that phase. He literally came into the project from the community and rose up through the ranks, you know, and has led so much change over the years, but still always kept that grassroots kind of origin, jumps into the community, helps people, engages a lot. You know, he does everything from top to bottom. And I think for that reason, he really is the perfect person to keep carrying the Session flag.
I don't know who this guy is, but
Who is this Jason guy?
He'll be joining us on the call shortly.
So to add to that as well, yeah, I'm sort of stepping back as well, but I'll be offering a sort of supporting role ongoing and still hopefully being part of the foundation and making things tick. And if we can get enough donations and funding and sort of momentum, I would love to come back. This is such a passion project for me. I really reflected over the last few months, you know, like what if we just shut down Session? What if we walk away? You know, what's the point of this technology? But I really think that I really feel like many countries in the world is heading into this high conflict phase, high phase of low truth and a lot of control of what you can and can't say. And I think Session is such a required technology, and I wish I could just, you know, throw all my energy into it. But yeah, I only have so much resources now, so I'm still going to add to it because I want to see it survive, because I just think it's so valuable right now.
what he's saying is he wished that he went to dev school instead of CEO school.
Yeah.
I think
Like my little toy. So
I think one thing just off the back of that as well is that, you know, now that things have been obviously a bit up in the air over the last couple of months, because we've been really uncertain about what Session will look like, into 2027 or even at the end of this year or even in the next couple of months. But I think now it's a little bit more clear to me that we have received enough donations, the foundation has received enough donations to at least support some team moving forward. And, Jason being on that team, that I think now we need to kind of go out to people and say, look, we have a plan, at least for the next kind of 6 months. Things can go really well if we are able to, boost the amount of funding that we're receiving. So, even another $50,000, even another $100,000 is enough to support, 1 or 2 more developers on a part-time or full-time basis. So, if you have been looking at the funding situation over the last couple of months and you've been unsure about whether you wanted to donate because you didn't want to kick in money to something that might not, have a future, I think it's important to say that there is a path now, and any funding that the foundation does receive now will just go to making the vision of Session and the products that it delivers and features that it delivers, what we've been talking about today, easier, because we can hire more development resources. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines for a little bit, I would really encourage you to make a contribution and help Jason and the future of Session to succeed. I know I'll be making a contribution as well. So I'm really excited about what Jason's going to do with the project, and excited about what the community is going to do with the project as well moving forward.
No pressure.
Yeah, hopefully grants come in the future, but yeah, in short term, every donation counts so much right now. So thank you to everyone who has donated. There's been some, like, people have done some big donations and many small. They're all so appreciated. I'm just so grateful that there's so many people who care about Session. And it's just so nice to see that Session will survive in some format. And hopefully it can get back to a thriving state and just keep expanding.
Yeah, I mean, just to talk about that a little bit as well, like there definitely is a bull case for Session as well, like or a very
Light on me. Bull case.
Which is that, you know, as we kind of unify the code bases and make things simpler, and as like AI kind of progresses and helps us develop more with less people, we should be able to launch Pro and get that out. That will bring a source of revenue into the project or value into the project that can then be used to sustain the development team, but also sustain the network at the same time. And that value coming in then allows like the development team to expand, the network to expand, and then to add more Pro features, expand the user base, like develop some of the features that we have been talking about putting into the application for a long time, like PFS and post-quantum, which has been one of the things that has been stopping users from using Session as a whole, putting LokiNet or a Session router into the application, making it faster. And as those things develop, like Pro gathers more and more value, the development team expands, the network expands. I think there is a case
just to clarify, PFS and PQ are not pro-gated. Those will be for everyone.
Yeah, but like the more Pro users that the Session gets, the more value that's coming into the ecosystem.
And the more, and our focus will be on Pro features. So like one of the things that's probably one of the first new Pro features that we develop once we have this sort of transitional thing behind us would be large file downloads. So we already have the file server can speak through Session Router, and that's what we need for larger file transfers. And that's what we get as part of that transition. So it sounds like we're sort of going back to the drawing board, but we have a bunch of stuff already on that part of the drawing board, and we're just getting it wired up.
Yeah, exactly. And Session is still a very big application. Like it was kind of sad to see, but right as we were letting people go because we didn't have any funding to continue the project, Session was reaching its highest monthly active users that it had ever reached. So it's kind of a little bit of a paradox for the application itself to be doing better than it ever has, but then also for like the core team that's been working on it to not be able to continue. So there's definitely market validation out there that Session is a tool that people want to use. We're not just spending time and resources here to support something that people don't use. So I think if we are able to kind of reduce the resources that Session consumes to be able to offer these services to people,
I might put it a little more bluntly that we've been forced to do that, and that actually may be a positive thing, because it's hard to go under a very fundamental change and drastically downsize your team. To say, hey, we're replacing you with AI. It doesn't go over very well in any industry, but I feel like our industry is probably the first to fall in that trap. But
if we were a publicly listed company, our stock price would be through the roof. Everybody's redundant, replaced by a team of 2 people with AI.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that there is a lot of potential in going down that road. It's not nice that we had to do it. It would have been nice if we had a couple $1 million funding, so that we could have 20 devs all using AI instead of 2. But there is a path forward here, and that is what we're working on.
And I mean, obviously, the horizon is a little bit further away on this, but I think it's possible that Session scales back up to a larger team down the line. This talk that we are having right now of 3 developers, that are able to get pro out and still be adding new features to session. Well, if this stuff is successful and, you know, there's actually some income for the foundation, then there will be a larger team. You know, we'll continue putting resources back into bettering the application, bettering the ecosystem wherever we can.
Our asks, though, to help the project get there is donations. Any donations would be greatly appreciated. Running nodes still extremely appreciated. If you've got a node and it's online, it is so valuable to keep that online, to keep the network operating well and decentralized as we go through this phase. And I don't know if we can say this one, but supporting the token would be cool too. But if we can't say that, then beat the mother flipper out of here. Another flip. There are helpful things though to like reward the node operators in terms of the token side, and running the nodes is really helpful for the network.
Yep.
So yeah, thank you. Is there any other thing people can do to help the project keep going and like drive up?
I think those are the main things, but on the other side of that coin, I just want to say, if you're somebody out there who has donated, or if you're somebody out there who has continued running a node during this period of extreme uncertainty, you are the reason the session is going to stay alive. Like, obviously, Jason is the person who's going to be doing it, but you're the reason that he's able to go and do it. You're the reason the app's going to stay in the stores, stay online, and people are still going to be able to use Session. So thank you to all of those people. There are literally thousands of you out there. Honestly, it means so much to me. It means so much to all of us who have spent so many years of our lives committed to this mission, that it can continue, and that candle is still lit thanks to you.
Yeah, I think just off the back of that as well, you know, obviously there's been a lot of uncertainty that, you know, has been created because we didn't have funding, and we've obviously put out these messages in the app and on the website and via our email lists, you know, warning about, you know, the impending shutdown of Session and removal of Session from the app stores because things were so uncertain. One thing I kind of want to make clear is that, you know, we have a plan now to support Session at least kind of into the next, or into kind of 2027, and if things go well, far beyond that. So, you know, if people were uncertain about, you know, what the future of Session was going to be and were migrating off the platform, I think something that would be really great for, you know, all of the people that listen to this, the people who are in our community, is to tell people that Session isn't going away on July the 8th, I think is when we said, or June the 8th, is when we said things were going to be shut down. We have a plan to go beyond that now. So if you could make your friends, your family who use Session aware that it's not going away, and also like the node operators, the people who are supporting Session through Session token, you know, there's probably some people out there who are just kind of like, oh, I might shut down my node because I'm not sure about what the future of Session is going to be. I'd really encourage you to come back. You know, it's a bit more of a community project now, but there will still be people supporting it. And if you were uncertain about the future and you didn't know what to do, I think I'm just trying to offer kind of the community a little bit more certainty now that there is a plan moving forward. So I would definitely encourage people, if they had been migrating off, to come back and help us make this vision a reality.
You know, even though, as Chris and Kee have said, the rest of us are stepping back. There's not all that much for me to be doing. If it's just Jason, I'll support him how I can. And we're all here still supporting, help, you know, in whatever capacity is possible. Yeah, honestly, just want to see Session continue, see the project go on. And that's what's going to happen. So we're just really happy that that's the outcome right now.
And just to be clear, what we're talking about right now in terms of this plan, like we're committed to this plan. So this is not a we need more donations to make this work. This is a we can make this work with the donations that we've received to date. So we are not going away. We are going to make this work. Now, receiving more donations and more grants will affect how quickly we can make it work. You know, are we talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 developers? We don't know that number yet, but it will be at least one. It'll be at least me, and very likely at least a second person. And if we can get some more, a third or fourth person. But yeah, I'll be here either way. I have spent some time looking around at what other enterprise offers kind of in the messaging space offer. And I don't think it's I don't think developing the features is beyond our capabilities, but we really need a partner to work with on this who can help us actually reach out to enterprises and help us support them, help us land the sales and help and so on.
All right, Alex, you want to get in there? We'll wrap things up. I feel like oh, this is going to be cut out.
No, it's not all going to be cut out. Absolutely not. I think it's good to mention all of that stuff. And still, the headline here is that session is going to continue. I think that is the most important takeaway for everybody, that we've had a lot of details in here. We've told some stories about the project and the history, where we want to go. But the main thing is session is going to live on. And it's thanks to the help from the community. It's thanks to the people that are still running nodes, and it's to be completely honest with you, because Jason still has that dedication and that drive and that burning desire to keep putting it out there. I'll be supporting you and cheering you on. I'll remain Session's biggest cheerleader. And I'm just so grateful to everybody that we've worked with over the last 8 years. All of the people in the community who have shown so much passion and love for Session over the last couple of months. And yeah, let's keep this party going.
Yeah. Keep the fire burning. It's been an absolute delight to work with you guys and build such cool tech. I'm just so grateful for all of everyone's time and energy in delivering such a thing. I'm so impressed that even though Session's even on autopilot right now, it's operating better than it ever has. It's working so well right now. And every donation and bit of support is what's going to help Session pull through and thrive. So thank you to everybody, and any further support would be greatly appreciated.
So I just add one point to that I'm committed to continuing to work on this as long as I can, as long as I can afford to. And I appreciate everyone in our community who's using Session or who wants to help maintain Session. This is a project that matters to me, and it matters to you guys. And let's keep going.
100%. Over the last couple of years, everyone who has ever talked to me at a conference and has thanked us for working on Session, just know that all of those things that you guys have said have been appreciated. We worked on this, or we worked on Session because of the community that really loves the application. And it was really sad to me that we would be in this position where we had to let a bunch of people go, and that it looked like Session might not continue. But I think now I can see the path forward. I'm so grateful for people like Jason who want to continue that mission, and for all of the community members as well who have kept running nodes, who have kept supporting us, who have just put all of their time and resources into making Session successful over the past 8.5 years, but also those people who are continuing to put resources in and continuing to donate. You guys are really what is powering Session, and I'm excited for the future moving forward, and also just very appreciative of everything that the community has given us over the last 8.5 years. So I'll still be around a little bit, but I just want to thank all of you guys. You've made the last 8.5 years very interesting time, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I would trade it for having, maybe $5 million funding right now.
Cool. That's us.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.